All right, we are live. Tom, tell us who you are and what you do, man.
Ah, well, great to be here, man. So, oh my God. First of all, let me assure everybody I'm not crazy, and that's
It's such a loaded question that I asked too.
so. Granted, you've known me for like 10 seconds, but I do promise you I'm not crazy. Aside from what I'm about to tell you, so long story short, I did like 25 years in hospitality, working in big fancy hotels, looking after lots of rich people and nice people and horrible people and lots of service and all that sort of stuff as sort of mid-level management. I've also worked for like Bentley, the car company, and I've had all sorts of crazy little jobs. I worked for Games Workshop making Space Marines and all this kind of stuff. But I was pretty set on the hospitality um, ladder, if you like, if it is a ladder. I'd got to the level where I was kind of second in charge of big fancy hotels. And then I had a weird encounter, and it just jumped me off the rails and put me on a whole different set.
That's
And
always how it works. I had a weird encounter.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, just like the Fresh Prince says, my life got turned upside down, and now I'm a little weirdo that makes videos about weird stuff. So in a nutshell, yeah. So I mean, I've always had a huge interest in. I was always that kid that was like obsessed by whatever he was into. So initially it was like fighter planes, and I could name all the US fighter planes and all this, and then it was like dinosaurs before that. So I think that helped or made me weirder, because as soon as things did start getting interesting for me, I was just like, I need to know everything about this field, because I'd never really had much of an interest in it previously. I was a very boots on the ground, science is king, and saw the space shuttle take off when I was little. That was amazing. But then when things start getting weird, and you have to go through that ontological shock, they call it, where your worldview changes, then you've got a lot of self-discovery to do first before you even start thinking about what's going on outside you, and stuff. So it's been a hell of a ride over the last couple of years. Um, yeah,
So what? So tell us what you have a show.
yeah, I do.
So
Yeah.
tell us where we can find you. And I like to do that at the beginning and at the end. So
Okay.
that's where
Cool.
we can find you.
So I ride two horses. So I will get into kind of how I got there, because it's part of the weird story is how I came to be making videos. But I've got my own YouTube channel, Tom Vernon UAP, and on that I make documentaries and sort of deep dives into anything to do with consciousness and UAP and UFOs and history in particular cases. And basically, I just wing it, and I figured that since I was so obsessed by this stuff, there's a lot of people out there. I'm no special little flower that's unique. There must be other people that are interested in it too. And a lot of people just haven't got the free time to go digging through the CIA reading room and stuff like that. So I thought, if I am researching a particular thing, I may as well make a little video about it and put it out there. So that's what I do. But I'm also co-host on the UAP Files podcast, um, which is, again, like that's what I'll kind of get round to telling, because that's how I ended up doing my own stuff. It was after I'd had, so I may as well just start from the beginning. So
Absolutely. Go
all
go
right.
for it. Go there.
Yeah, man. So I had a perfectly normal childhood, and yeah, I did have a weird thing happen when I was a little kid. I saw a ghost, but that's another story.
Whole
But
nother
that
story.
really, it really stuck with me. Like how most memories kind of fade or whatever with time. Like I can still remember that crystal clear now, as if it was yesterday. And then um God, what's probably like 25 years ago, my mum had a shared death experience with her. As her parents died, she saw people in the room, and she was describing that she'd always had like this auntie that everyone was like, oh, she can stop your headaches and she can tell your future and all this kind of stuff. But then she had this experience where her dad was passing on, my granddad, and she was like, I think I'm having a mental break because there's a little dog sat on the end of the bed. And like she described this little dog, and one of her sisters pulled out this old black and white photograph and was like, does it look like, she described it perfectly,
Yeah.
and she's like, that's his dog, like that's his old dog from when he was young and stuff. And then these people were coming in the room, and she was like obviously freaked out. It's incredible, highest stress you can be under when you're losing a parent. But she was describing perfectly these relatives that she'd never met, and the older family in the room were going like, Jesus Christ, that's old Uncle Peter, and and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So that kicked the door open is the only way I can describe it for her. And she's now a very successful psychic medium. She's worked with the police and identified suicide victims that have no ID or nothing on them, and wild stuff like that. And I was very skeptical at first, but I mean,
How
we
old
could
were
talk
you?
for hours. Oh, that was probably 25 years ago. So I was about 20 when
Oh,
this went on.
so
20.
relatively, grown. So
Yeah, well,
wow,
yeah,
that's a shock in itself.
you're telling me, dude.
You're-
Yeah. So
so, I mean, like talk about world exploding a little bit.
massively, yeah. So I mean, we could go for ages about the whole psychic thing, honestly, because I started from a point of extreme skepticism. And obviously, it's somebody that you love intensely, your mum, but I was like, is there more going on here than, what you think? Like, are you under some sort of impression of people? Are you incredibly good at reading the room, or, what's going on? But I'll give you a quick example. Why not? Because I had two absolute breakthrough moments for me. And I challenge anybody to not at least think that that's gives you
Yeah,
more reason to
I love
investigate.
his stuff, by the way. Just saying.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well. Okay, so working in the hotels. The first hotel that I worked in, a really good friend of mine, Steve, used to work with me. We were both middle management, and we were working in this old, like, Georgian hotel. So it's like 200-300-year-old building, crazy old building, black and white place. There isn't a straight floor in the whole place. And we used to do weddings there, and he and I used to run the weddings. And basically, a long story short, like, our staff would go and pour the drinks and clear the glasses and stuff like that. We'd make sure everything's going good and, run the day. And then during the speeches, our team would get out of there and just leave the room nice and quiet for people to talk. And we didn't have a door behind the bar. So we would just have to stand with our hands behind our back, behind the bar, like, shop mannequins, and just look polite whilst these people were doing these speeches. And that's all well and good. But when you're doing like 2 weddings a week, every week, you hear the same speeches and the same jokes, and it becomes so dull. So I don't know why, but we started doing this stupid game where, like behind the bar, you chop all the fruit, and we got all this chopped lemon. Well, facing us was this glass-fronted wine fridge. And so what we used to do, whilst the speeches were on and our staff weren't around, is we would get these slices of lemon, and just like in Wayne's World, we'd throw them at the fridge and try and stick them on the front of the fridge, okay? And then try and not laugh, and it was the whole kind of stupid stuff you do like as a kid. So we would do that, and obviously we never told our staff because we don't want them doing that as well, and we never told our boss because why on earth would you do that? You know what I mean? So it was literally only he and I on the planet knew that. Then things took a turn, and he died. Steve had a heart attack and died at like 23. Absolute legend. But probably a year later, I was at my mum's, and she's at the point where she's doing readings for people now. And we're just having a cup of tea and chilling, and she goes, "Oh, your friend Steve's here." And so I was like,
No
"Just tread
way.
softly here, because this is this is
a little raw, man.
just tread softly." Yeah, like, this hit me hard. And she was like, he says, "Stop being a wuss. Um, you should just believe in this." And I was like, "Yeah, well, it's not that I don't believe in stuff." And she's like, "He says to tell you about when you guys used to throw lemons at the front of a fridge." And I was just like, "Oh, damn."
Wow.
Oh, damn. And I was trying to think, like, "Oh my God, have I ever mentioned this?" And I was like, No, like, like, why you wouldn't ever at any point tell your mum, like, "Oh, by the way, I stuck some lemon to a fridge today," and or anything like that. I had never told another soul that story. And then she continued on, and like, we used to call each other stupid names on the walkie-talkies and stuff. And she's like, she was calling me the names that he used to call me through the walkie-talkie at work.
That's
So I was just
amazing.
like, wow. So that was a massive moment for me. And then, as if that wasn't enough, I had another one. So I restore guitars just for fun every now and then. Like, I'll buy one that's beat up, redo it, repaint it if I need to, and then sell it on when I finish playing with it. And so my mum lives in Spain, and I was living on my own in this house in England. Hadn't spoken to her for a few days. And I was at this stage where I'd got this guitar that I'd refinished, and it looked beautiful, and I'd put all new electrical components in it, and it just wouldn't work. So it was driving me crazy, and it was at the point where I'd kind of test it and try the wiring, and then I'd get annoyed and just stand it up in a corner and leave it for a week, and then like take another run at it when I'd got the patience. And I was sat in my living room on my own, no telephones on, nothing, with this thing on my knee, and I just tested it again, and it didn't work. And I was there going, like, calling it plenty of spicy names. And she sent me a message on Facebook Messenger, and she says, "What the hell was going on with you and this guitar?" And I was like, "What?" She says, "There's a guy here that says you're about to ready to smash this guitar up. Like, what's the score?" And I was like, "Okay." So I said, like, "Yeah, I can't get it to work." And I didn't even say it's the wiring that's wrong. So then she says, well, this fella says, if you turn it over and look at where the wires go, there's a thing that looks like you've got like three things that look like a silver coin, and then there's one of them that looks like a silver coin with a little beanbag stuck to it. And if you look at the wiring of a guitar, the back of the knobs, the adjuster, the volume and the tone knobs, well, the volume ones just look like a silver coin. The tone one has this little extra resistor on that looks like a little beanbag. So I was like, yes, there is. And she was like, and he says that that's faulty, so you need to take it out. And I was like, well, it isn't, because they're all brand new components out of a packet, so it can't be. And she was just like, he says, don't waste my time, take the new one out, stick the old one in, and just test it. So I was like, okay, whatever. Soldered it out, put the old one in, it worked perfectly. So I'm like, okay. So that message came via somebody that's like 1,300 miles away, had no idea what I was doing. I haven't spoken to for a few days, let alone said this guitar's driving me crazy. And I got basically a wiring diagram. And my mum's neither an electrician or a guitarist. So I was like, okay, this thing's real. I'm all in. So so that was kind of
That's
cool.
insane. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So
It's
just
wild.
well, that'll change your worldview, man.
It
Like,
did.
I mean, absolutely shake. Like, it's like throwing yourself. It's like throwing yourself in a giant jar, putting the lid on, and just shaking it up, man. And then
Honestly,
opening the lid again and being like, okay.
yeah, it was just like that. I mean, it was amazing to finally be able to go, oh my God, you were right this whole time.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild.
But since then, I mean,
Absolutely
some of the
wild.
things that I've seen are just incredible. Like the amount of good it does for people that are grieving when that person is all but stood in the room with them and they're saying, you know, you need to do this thing, or it's sharing memories with people. It's incredible. So that was my kind of introduction that the world isn't exactly normal. And then where the UFO stuff started, so over lockdown, I was basically babysitting this big hotel. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Shining, but like,
Oh yeah.
I was working in this big country hotel that looked a lot like that building, but you know, surrounded by golf courses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then when they announced lockdown, there was no rules. It wasn't like, oh, here's what to do if you're a business. They just literally said, go home, isolate. And my boss was like, I can't just leave this place empty. He's like, we're gonna get, like, this place is like 500 acres and it's, you know, it's outrageously expensive. He's like, we're gonna get robbed. I can't do that. Like, he's like, I hate to ask, but do you want to stay here instead of going home? And I was like, yeah, why not? Yeah, because I've got guitars to restore, and I'm pretty happy on my own anyway. So
Yeah.
I did that, but it left me with so much time on my hands to just watch YouTube and, you know, just like, so much
Just
time.
all the things, right?
Yeah. So I watched this just at the end of lockdown. I watched this video and it was 4 different guys, and I wish I could find the video now, but it was 4 different guys that didn't know each other, and they'd all had this weird experience. And I found that really interesting because I was like, they don't know each other, but they've all had a parallel experience. That's something interesting. And one of them had been out hiking and was sat on a rock and was thinking how beautiful everything was, you know, just having one of those little reflection moments. And this light appeared in the sky. I think 2 of them were praying outside.
Just to give you a high, don't mind me. You're going to see some crazy stuff on my screen.
Okay. No worries. So, yeah, 2 of them were praying and like they saw lights appear in front of them. And then one of them was meditating. And he said, like, you know, he's doing all this thing about gratitude. And then he opened his eyes and there's this light in front. So I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then lockdown finished. We went back to normal and working full time and all this kind of stuff. And I remember I'd worked this big long shift in the hotel, and this, for some reason, that thing that I'd seen with these guys was really on my mind, and I was like, I really want to try this because obviously I know that world's a bit weird with what Mum does. So I was like, I really want to know what these guys have experienced. So I drove home. I got back from work at probably 10 o'clock at night, and I thought, right, screw it. I may as well just try it right now. So I opened my driver's door, and I was still sat in the chair, in the seat, and I looked through the crack between the door and the chassis of the car because it was open, and I literally said in my head, "Go on then. If there's anything to this, show me something. That would be awesome." And exactly where I was looking at exactly the moment that I thought that, there was this big blue flash. So it was kind of the size of your own thumbnail, you know, but obviously I don't know. It could have been something enormous miles away. It could have been something small right in front of me. I don't know, but it seemed like it was, you know, space. And it was like a royal blue, you know, like a Christmas light, like how they kind of come on and go off, but like a really deep blue. And this thing came on for like 3 seconds, exactly where I was looking, and then went off. And I was not scared, but I was really freaked out. I was just like, what the hell, you know, because it wasn't just like I'd seen something in the sky. It was like a call and response type thing. Right. So I went in the house, and like, obviously I couldn't get my head around what had just happened. But after a couple of days, I just thought, you just had a really long shift. you got back, you probably just some little wire shorted out in the back of your head or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, so
I do. Yeah.
your brain tells you that everything's fine and puts a blanket on things for you. And then I basically just forgot that happened. Really, like as crazy as it was, like it was wild. But I just thought there's no evidence for this happening anywhere, and you're the only person that saw this, and surely it's you being tired and imagining and things. So 3 weeks later, I was playing some video games, and I was in the flow state, where you just switch your brain off and you're just looking at the pretty lights and having a great time. And I just got this thought in my head. It wasn't a voice, but it was just like, look outside. And it was weird enough to like snap me out of what I was doing. So I paused the game and looked out my window, and I mean, I'm very familiar with the stars and stuff in it anyway. And I was looking at Mars, and Mars at that time of year was this orange, like burned orange dot. But just down from it was a bright orange dot, sort of similar sort of size, but much brighter. And I've got an app on my phone, which I really recommend everybody gets. And they don't sponsor me. It's called Stellarium. And it's totally free. But what it lets you do is you point your phone at the sky and it tells you exactly what you're looking at.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's like if you see a light moving, you can point it at and it'll say like medical satellite, or it'll say like Starlink, anything like that. It's so good.
Right.
So I pulled my phone out and I opened up Stellarium whilst I'm looking at this thing saying, what the hell is that? Pointed my phone at it, and there's Mars on Stellarium, and there's all the surrounding stars, and there they are on Stellarium. But this orange thing wasn't on it. So I was like,
wow.
Okay. So I couldn't take my eyes off it, and I said out loud, I was like, well, you're weird. And then it started to move. So if Mars is here and this orange thing was here, it went around in a circle, and then when it got to like, the 2 o'clock, it shot off like if you see like a spark from an angle grinder.
Yeah.
It moved real slow at first, and then it just pinged off so much that it just became a streak.
Wow.
So I know what shooting stars look like, and I know they can be orange, but they don't go round in a circle first. It's
right.
like, it's like you're reversing out of a parking space and then screaming off. So that then was just like, that just broke some windows in my head, and I was like, okay, something really strange is out there. And the weirdest thing about it is like, that was definitely a tap on the head. Like, that wasn't just catching a glimpse of something. I was like,
No,
that was weird. That was an experience. So I just decided I need to know everything about this. So I started going through YouTube and looking up documents and stuff like that. And I had a really rough time because there's so much stuff where the one thing I've learned is like, if anybody tells you that they've got it all figured out, they're lying. But there's
beyond
the stuff that you see is all like, oh, it's this from planet Zod, and the lizard-headed angel people built the pyramids with lasers, and I was like, this just no, like, where's the scientists? Where's the good stuff? So I was on Instagram and I found this account called UAP Files, and it was just cases. There was no like creepy synth music or CGI aliens dancing or anything like that. It was just data. So I was like, oh, thank God. And I just started devouring all of these historical cases, trying to find something like what had happened to me. And then, so kind of just to zoom out for a sec, the last 2 years have been absolutely insane, and so many things that if you were skeptical or even sane, you'd just say, well, that's a coincidence. But then there gets to be this mountain of them. So this was one of those things. So like I just started commenting on one or two of his posts saying like, oh, that thing that you've just shared reminds me of this case that I've been reading about from, Sweden or whatever, and got the attention of the account holder, Jimmy. And this went on for a while. And then at one point he noticed that I make music and stuff. And he said, look, this might sound weird, but I've got this post I want to do about this particular UFO case. How do you feel like making me like a 30-second piece of music to go in the background? Because I didn't want to get copyright struck. So I was like, yes, that'd be amazing. So in the process of me back and forth saying like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Do you like the tone? Do you like the volume and stuff? I told him about my experience, and then he said, well, you should be on the podcast then. We'll have you on as a guest. And I was like, I don't know anything. I'm not these people that, like, why would you want? That's crazy. So, but I did it. I did it, and it went, and I had a great time. And when I look back at it now, it's like it makes you cringe, but you just got to do these things,
Right.
And then a couple of weeks after that, he had a guest, Eamon Ansbro, who's head of an observatory in Ireland, and he's published papers about plasma being alive and some amazing stuff like that. But he basically said, look, I need a nerd, and you've got that head. Like
You're the nerd.
Yeah. So I'm like the weird friend that he just, that specific weird little tool in the box that is only handy once in a while. And
What are they?
that one socket that anything else.
Unitasker, right? It's got one task.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
guys.
So he asked me to co-host this episode with Eamon because I know about, I'm school level, but I'm very interested in science and all of these historical stuff that he was talking about. And we got on great. And his feedback was really good. So then he said, well, why don't you just be co-host of the channel? So I was like,
it's kind of a leap.
Absolutely, isn't it? It's crazy. And I'm sat here like 6 months after having my first interest in the subject. I'm like, I've just been watching all of these people on YouTube or reading their books, and now I can have a conversation with them. I was like, this is like living inside some crazy computer game. So that's what got me on UAP Files, and I'm incredibly grateful every time. I've spoken to some amazing people. I've learned so much cool stuff, and I figured because on there we were just doing interviews with people, my channel could be these deep dives and this, these like real an hour long or 2 hours looking at 100 years of UAP history and stuff like that. And my head, I'm happy, like I'm not afraid to say, like my life completely changed. Like when I started looking into this stuff, I stopped drinking. I like my taste in stuff changed. Like I didn't enjoy like horror movies, and there's so much weird stuff. Like my character changed, and I lost all interest in my job. Like I was like,
it happens.
yeah, man. Well, I'm learning that now, but I was like, why am I putting on a suit and going and pretending, and playing this hospitality game when something out there is like wanting to communicate with people? Like, what the hell am I doing this? So I just decided, like, I'm going to take a risk. I'm just gonna try and get by doing this full time. So I did, and every single time I get to a point. So the plan B in my head was, as soon as you start running out of money, I'm going to get a normal job and we'll just do this as a side gig. And every time I get anywhere near there, something drops in out of the blue and it's just like, carry on, and it's right. And again, this mountain of coincidence keeps growing. So So, for example, like I said, I spend a lot of time in Spain where my mum lives, but I'd only got this like 10-year-old Chromebook out there. So I was trying to make documentaries on it, and the thing was virtually catching fire and stuff.
You,
And
you reach over and it's burning hot, and you're like, oh, it's
dude,
good.
honestly, literally, it'd be going slow, and I'd be like, I'll just open Task Manager and see how it's doing. It's like CPU 99%. Help me, call the emergency services. So I said in one of my videos, like, you know, because my channel wasn't monetized at the time or anything. I started from scratch, and I said, like, look, I really appreciate everybody that's subscribed because I'm trying to do this full time. I need some new gear, and eventually, when YouTube starts throwing me a biscuit a month or whatever, like, I'm gonna buy a new laptop. And a legendary guy called Aztlan from LA just sent me a message. He's like, "What's your address?" And I was like, okay. So I gave him my address, and then he just sent me this amazing laptop. And it's like, okay. So now, like, that thing's
got your laptop. Yeah,
yeah.
amazing.
I couldn't. It felt so outrageous. I keep needing to like pinch myself, and then I got contacted and invited, like, by some incredible people that were having this UFO. It was called Contact UFO Congress in Madrid, in Spain, and they were like, "We want you to come, and you can bring your mum. Like, all expenses paid. Come and check it out and hang out with people for 3 days." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So then, next thing you know, I've gone from just like having something weird happen to then I'm stood to Madrid and meeting these people face to face that have had abduction experiences and stuff like that, and it just keeps snowballing, man. It really does. It's been such a wild ride. I appreciate that as a huge amount for people to swallow when they've got no idea who I am, but believe me, I'm struggling myself. Yeah.
Right. You're like, is this really happening? Like, it doesn't. Yeah. But I do know what you mean. Stuff just serendipitous, man. It's like it doesn't even make any sense, but I guess it's you're putting something out that's good, some good energy out into the universe, right?
I really hope so.
Because stuff's coming back, right?
Yeah, man. It sounds really hippie-ish, but I consider my job to just be being as useful as I can to whatever this thing is. Like, you know, I know that sounds borderline religious or whatever, but it's
No.
like, no, okay, if you guys need a hand, like, I want to be that hand, and then things are just working out. Like, I don't know, maybe tomorrow the International Space Station is going to crash on my house, but until then,
You never know,
keep
right?
swinging. And
Until then, you're doing this.
I'm having a great time. Yeah, and meeting people like yourself and people from all around the world. And I just keep I keep having this moment where I just kind of snap out, and I'm like, how the hell is this working? I mean, last night we were interviewing an ex-Green Beret and a security chief from Vandenberg Air Force Base.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I know Vandenberg.
yeah, really?
I do.
Oh,
I've been there a couple times. Yeah.
interesting. Have you seen any giant red rectangles by the way?
No, but we did a lot of we actually ran this is crazy. We ran drug interdiction missions out of there. So
Wow.
we stayed there, and we would fly out and go to what's called the Las Padres National Forest, which is south of there. Had a couple Bigfoot type experiences.
Interesting.
Not UFOs though, but I wish,
I kind of feel like it's all the same thing, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of our space bases. It's like the Vandenberg is it is a military space base, right? It's not Space Force right now, but it's where they fire off Titan missiles. They fire missiles there. So either way, it would make sense why it would be a hotbed, possibly, right? So
yeah, well,
Vandenberg Air Force Base. Sorry. to derail you, but green
Well,
beret.
it's just literally saying like, I'm sat here in my bedroom, and then I'm like looking at these faces, and I'm like, this guy's an ex-special forces Green Beret. There's Jeff Muscatelli from Vandenberg. There's Jimmy from the UAP files, and then there's just me. I was like, this, it's so surreal, man.
Why am I even here?
Yeah, like at some point these people are going to notice that, like, what the hell are you doing here?
Yeah. No, I got it. I totally understand. Very cool. So
It's a great ride, and I'm so grateful for having the opportunity to do what I do, because I've learned so much in the last couple of years, and it's the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't know anything, but there's so much to this stuff where as soon as you start feeling like you can draw a line between two things, it's like, oh, and now the line's squiggly,
no, and I love to hear you say that, because I was just thinking this. Actually, I wouldn't say I got depressed about it, but I got like, just when you think you have things figured out,
Yeah.
you get hit with something else, and you're like,
Yeah.
I just can't, like, I can't write about this again, or I can't make an episode about this again, or I can't, you know what I mean? But then, so what's eating at me is, then I'm like, but what I've put out in the past isn't necessarily the truth. So I kind of need to, like, do this is one of the things with podcasting I'm finding out. Like, it's easy to, and like I said, I've done this 10 years, but I feel like this is one of those times when you're putting out information, right? And it's a quickly, especially in the space like you're in, it's quickly evolving all the time. So you put out this piece of information and you're like, damn, that's not the whole story. But after, you've already made this episode and all this stuff, so you're like, man, do I like make a new episode and rehash stuff and then say, well, here's the new, I guess it's a way to do that, but I wish it was something like print, where you could just like, what do they do? They like add additional information down at the bottom. They're like, this article has been updated. We can't really do that with a podcast episode. It doesn't work that way. So and as you know, it's a lot of work. So it's like, you're like, man, I gotta make it. I guess it's content though. You're like, well, I guess I gotta make another episode. But
yeah. I try and avoid having a conclusion. Like,
agreed.
the healthiest point for me is when my mind gets changed, because that shows that I'm learning still, and when you see other people that are like, I know the whole score,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, there's just as many problems with the people that think they've got the whole thing figured out as the people that say nothing's real and nothing exists. One's atheist and one's like hardcore zealotry, and you've got to be malleable with it. Like, I was studying those drones, the New Jersey drones, as it was happening.
I have this smudge on my face. It's driving me crazy.
The camera.
New equipment, so I don't know what's going on there. Do you see it? Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's your is it you've got something keying out like the background?
Yeah, but it's not, because if I go, see?
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
That's weird. Oh, has it got a reflection on the
Does that make it go away?
Yeah, it did.
That's what it is. Anyway,
if you want to pause for a second and sort it out, be my guest, dude.
because we can edit.
Yeah.
Sorry. Because again, it's the first time every time, man.
This is the world we live in. For some reason, you've got to be comfortable.
Editing is a wonderful thing. So that's why I won't do live shows. Like, live shows are a nightmare to me. Like,
yeah.
Why would I do a live show?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Why raise the stakes and roll as many dice as you can?
So here, my apologies.
Don't worry.
Nose. So annoying.
Is what it is.
It's like there's a reflection. It literally is.
Yeah, it's like it's catching a light from somewhere else.
I wonder if I bring it. It's just super frustrating to me because I did episodes yesterday and this didn't.
No.
Does that seem better?
Yep. Yep.
Crazy tune.
It's this weird world, man. Sometimes it plays with you.
A lot of things I'm like, man, do I have like a halo around me or this what is going on?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't. Maybe I just don't have enough of the light in the right spots. I don't know, man. But that's definitely better, but it's still
Yeah. Your face looks clear.
whatever, man. I got to get my studio squared away because yeah, it's kind of like half storage room at this point. It's so freaking annoying. So all right, I guess we're back. I'll figure it out. It's better than it was, but it's not perfect. So whatever, dude. All right.
Don't want to peak too soon. There's nowhere to go after that.
Put myself in that box, right? But yeah,
But I know what you mean with making stuff that you can't edit. Like I thought I'd do a one-off about these New Jersey drones, and then as soon as I finished it, someone got in touch with me with more information, and I was like, oh god, I need to do a part 2. But like, is that fair on my viewers? And I was like, I don't want to. Okay, I've got to do it. So I did this part 2. As soon as I did the part 2, I found this drone company which has a contract with DARPA and the Navy, and I was like, oh my god, like they make this drone that can take off vertically, fold out wings to a 7-foot wingspan, and I was like, oh Jesus, I need to make a part 3. Yes. So I was like, I need to do it. Tero drones, like pterodactyl. And they've got a contract with DARPA and the Navy, and there's like this gigantic naval base in New Jersey with this particular harbor that goes like 3 miles out to sea. And I was just like, it's perfect. You load up this flat top boat with a bunch of these things, sail it out to sea, in they come 50 at a time as the sheriff's like click, 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 click.
Yep.
But then you get the stuff that's going on over Eglin, RAF Lakenheath, all these airfields, which is lights in the sky and things pinging around, and that we can't seem to do anything with. And it's like we're mixing up some definite black testing with some genuinely weird stuff here. So I know exactly what you mean. Like, I really wish I'd maybe started later and just made one long documentary, but instead it turned out to be this 3-part.
The UAP drone stuff was a definite mess in our space, right? Because I had made an episode, and a guy came at me hard.
Wow.
Like with mad game, like coming at me, like, and I was just like, wow, man. So my reaction was not to, react or be an ass. I'm like, well, why don't you come on the show?
Excellent.
And what's funny is, so we got it scheduled, and all the wind got taken right out of his sails because everything came out.
Okay.
So it was kind of like one of those things, like, man, you can actually check the episode out, and I'd
love to.
And it's on. Did I put it on YouTube? I think I did. But it's basically like, he came at me, and I just had him on, and that's kind of how it was, right? And it turned out to be a pretty good conversation, but it was definitely like, what do you do in that case, right? So
yeah. That's the one thing about this UFO, UAP, paranormal world, which I find so strange. Like, for people that are on both sides of the fence, you get your true believers and your like true skeptics. And like, it seems to be one of the only fields where people will take the opinion of a second-hand skeptic over a first-hand witness. And even within this tiny niche, because
Yeah.
99% of the world just wants to pay their bills, go to work, have a family, pay the rent.
Right.
We're a very small slice of the cake, and that slice is just trying to kill itself all the time. Like, they're always shouting at each other and throwing rocks at each other, and from the outside it must just be like, oh, the nerds are fighting again, like, and that, I think that really holds us back from. It's great when you find somebody with a different opinion, when you can just have a respectful debate and not have to come out with one guy the winner at the end. Like,
Right.
at
Well,
least
actual civil discourse, right?
yeah, exactly. We're here to learn about it, and yet we seem to be making heroes and villains out of people, and
Yeah.
it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
I hate it. Yeah, civil discourse has got, and why do we feel like we always have to win? There's got to be a winner or a loser for every single situation or
Absolutely.
whatever. And why can't we all? I mean, the bottom line is this, and you alluded to it earlier. We don't know anything about anything. Not really,
No.
not definitively. I mean, you know about you, I know about me,
Mhm.
but anything in between is all kind of conjecture, right? Like, and there's very few black and white facts in this world. There just is,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And I think people do not like the gray. They can't handle it.
Absolutely.
And like, yeah, like, I mean, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but like, something I've been researching a lot lately is the flat earth debate. Like, what?
Mm.
Nor do I really care what it is. I mean, I
No.
care, but I don't, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. Rather than the actual argument, the phenomena itself of how people come to believe.
yeah,
I had a girl that worked for me, and I won't. I'm not saying this to pick on her, because she rolled sixes, to
yeah,
come into life. She was beautiful. She was very intelligent, good upbringing, and all this. She happened to be working with me in a hotel, and one day it came out. She was like, "But the Earth's flat, isn't it?" Anyway, ha ha ha. And I was like, "Whoa, wait, whoa. Let's pull some strings
back
here.
up
Like,
here for a
how
second.
did like, what makes you think that?" She's like, "Well, we just can't trust what they say." So I was like, okay,
Man,
come with me. So I took her into my office, and I got on the live feed from the International Space Station. I'm like, what shape is that? This big blue thing that we're on. She's like, well, it looks round. And I'm like, okay, where have you come to take the opinion of, you know what I mean? And it was just through, she was bright enough to say, like, it was just from scrolling and just absorbing it through, the empty can rattles the most, basically, and people that are loud about something, whatever it may be, it just sinks in.
yeah.
And I found that morbidly fascinating, that somebody so clever. I mean, we've all got the facility with the internet to learn anything from human history.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. This thing right here,
Yeah.
we literally have all, in essence, in theory,
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
all of human knowledge and experience
Yeah.
literally in the palm of your hand. I love it when like your school teacher would be like, "What? When
Oh
would you
yeah.
ever have a calculator?
You're not
Why
gonna have a
can't you just use a
calculator out there.
calculator?" And they'd be like, "What? When would you ever walk around with a calculator?" Because you and I are about the same age.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little older, but my teacher would be like, "You'd never have it." Actually, I have that. I have all kinds of stuff.
Me too.
So it's unbelievable to me how that with all this knowledge, you still have so many questions.
Yeah.
And part of it is you don't look, but in your space, because you kind of I wouldn't say pigeonhole yourself, but you're in the UFO UAP space
Yeah,
mostly, right?
yeah,
Talk
yeah,
about a
yeah.
space that's like got so many theories, right?
Mm.
Everything from inner Earth to yeah, aliens aren't aliens, they're demons, they're
Oh
Nephilim,
yeah,
and yeah, I mean
yeah, yeah,
all the
yeah, yeah,
things, right? So
yeah,
how do you I mean, I know you want to let people tell their stories just like I do.
yeah.
And we joke back and forth, you know, oh, crazy or I'm crazy, I'm gonna come at you. But
Yeah.
oh, you want to hear something crazy? Right. But at the end of the day, uh, how do you manage and or let people just kind of
I think that's
with all of it? Do you filter it before you even get there? Or you know what I'm saying?
I think that's a fantastic question, and honestly, the answer is kind of as grey as the subject itself. I trust my gut
Yeah.
as much as anything else. If something feels wrong, or I see somebody, and just in that 2 seconds you think, "Don't like this guy," you just don't go there. And unfortunately, we've just got to feel it out. We don't know anything about this.
Anything.
And the problem with like UFOs or cryptids or the paranormal or telekinesis is it's all in this basket of stuff we don't know. So when people see a black triangle the size of 3 football fields, and then they see a ball of light the size of a marble, like they're all UFOs. But it's like, imagine jumping in the ocean and you see a fish, a whale, a shark, a prawn. Just because it's stuff that we don't understand, we can't go. I saw a bird once. I know everything there is to know about birds.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
this is going to sound mean, and that's probably fair, but anytime you see a photograph of anything triangular to do with UFOs, the first comment is going to be somebody saying, TR3B, definitely. And it's like, well, you don't know what a TR32, you don't know what a TR3A, you don't even know what those words mean. Like,
Right.
how can you be so hyper specific about a black silhouette of a triangle? And but it's that thing of like, we need order. And honestly, the more I get into it, the this could be a very long answer, so I'll try and pull my punches a little bit. But so I studied history as much as anything else, because there's two things that really frustrate me. I try and stay as positive and open about everything, but the one thing that I find most frustrating is everybody wants disclosure. Like, that's the word that you'll see. Is when are we going to get disclosure? But it's no different than the war on terror. It's something that you can't define it. There is no end goal. Disclosure means a different thing to everybody.
Yes.
But for some people, it's we want the government to admit some things here. Well, that's happened. Like, we've had congressional hearings with people under oath. Other people, disclosure means we want to know all the CIA's secret history of studying. It's like, well, good luck with that, because the CIA, just like most governments, have done some pretty dark stuff, and not at any point are you going to get this Scooby-Doo moment where they go, "Ha ha! It was Majestic 12 the whole time, and here's all their files." It's just not going to happen. So people, it sounds so judgmental of me to say, but they waste so much time waiting on one government from one part of the planet to
Yeah.
tell them what they've learned so far, when this thing doesn't care about borders. And it's been happening since probably before we were here. It's happening all around the world, and yet people's total focus is on, oh, we found this operation called, like, Immaculate Constellation, and it's like, oh, okay, well, what have we learned from that? Nothing, but we found something. That's like, no, you're being led around a garden by your nose, and
Right.
you're never
Yeah.
going to get there. So honestly, the more I get into the rabbit hole and speaking to people that have had really profound experiences, the more this has in common with like spiritual stuff and like cryptids and things like that. There's a phenomena which happens and has happened to me. So like that has to be your compass, called an apport, where something solid can appear that just can't have come from anywhere. You know, people have said forever, "Oh, I was thinking about my deceased parents, and this white feather appeared in front of me," or you know, the red cardinal appears, and all this kind of stuff. Well, like another lady, for example, had been for a reading with my mum and talking to her granddad, and when she got home, she rang my mum, and I was in the room, so good science for me. And she was like, I got home and my granddad's service badge, his like cap badge, was in the middle of my bed, like on top of the blankets.
Wow.
You know, so I was like, whoa, you know, that to me has got more in common with UFO stuff than Marvin the Martian in a little metal spaceship scooting across space and coming over here to steal a cow.
Yeah.
Like this stuff, and just like Bigfoot, you know, or Nessie, or the African dinosaur thing, you know, like this stuff seems to appear from nowhere, interact with a very small group of people or the individual, and show them imagery that is culturally appropriate for them at the time,
Right. Yes.
and then disappear. So it presents itself as impossible but probable.
At the same time.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so a great example is Bigfoot. You know, there's a video of this 8-foot hairy dude walking across the road. He walks behind a tree and he's gone. And like the CIA can tell how much change is in your back pocket from space. They've got such this network of cameras. So if this was a monkey or whatever, like we'd see his house, we'd see piles of dung, or you know, all of this stuff. But
Yeah.
it's gone. And it's the same with UFOs. We don't track them coming in from Alpha Centauri all the way here. Like they turn up over a nuclear facility, they hang out for 5 or 10 minutes, and they're gone. And when I studied the history of it, like a great example is some of the weird stuff. You know, so in the 1800s, there was repeated sightings over the US of a wooden sailing ship in the sky, and there were even and like people were tracking it going from state to state. It's in all the I've got the local newspaper cuttings and all this kind of stuff. There was even examples of an anchor would come down, a guy would come down in a little brown suit and be like, oh, hello there, we're from Mars, you know, don't you know, this is our wonderful invention, we'd just like some water and some bread if that's okay. And everyone's like, oh, okay, that's crazy, but you know, like we know what a boat is, so this is some sort of space boat. So at the time it was
Right.
impossible, but they're like, well, I know what
Like
a boat is.
it's like time bandits or something.
Yeah, literally, man. Yeah, literally. But
Yeah.
they're like, you know, we know that people need water and they need bread, so this kind of makes sense, but it's so surreal. And there you go, and then off they go, and then you get like, there was an amazing encounter in the 60s. I can't think where it was. But so there's this little farmer in the middle of nowhere. A literal like old school flying saucer comes down and lands in his farmyard. These little creatures get out and they've got an empty jug, and they're like pointing at it and like pointing at their mouths as if they want some water. So this like polite, nice farmer, he's like, okay, gets the jug, goes and fills it up with water out of the well for them, and they give him pancakes. They give him buckwheat pancakes, and he calls it in. He calls the local police. The Air Force come out, and he passes them these pancakes, and he's like, yeah, they were really nice. You know, I don't know who they are, but he's just this nice, trusting, well-mannered guy, and that's so surreal. But to him, it was kind of crazy, but still understood like the rules of the game.
Yeah.
And jump forwards 50 years, you get the famous Tic Tac encounter with David Fravor, Commander Fravor.
Yeah.
That guy is literally, if you look at his service history, he makes Maverick look like a clown. Like, he was leader of the Black Aces. He was like first over the border in the Gulf. He's had like 12,000 hours of combat hours,
Yeah.
all successful. You know, like,
you couldn't find a more credible name.
oh my God, if he was in an action movie, you'd go, come on, make it believable or something. He's literally insanely overqualified. His encounter with something that looked solid outmaneuvered his fighter jet, but has no wings and no cockpit and no engines. So it's like he's interacting with this thing and doing these maneuvers that he's trained to know how to do. And he's like, I'm going to head it off and close the circle and stuff. And then this thing just disappears and reappears at his cap point, which is the area where they're supposed to start and leave the exercise. So it's like it dangles this carrot of like, I'm just a normal machine. And then it's like, pang, okay, explain this bit. Okay, bye, that'll do. So there's this history of it interacting with small groups because people react really differently when there's a big group to a small group. Like, you imagine the famous Phoenix Lights encounter, which I'm sure people have heard of. This giant black V-shaped thing turns up over Phoenix at like dusk. And if that had happened in broad daylight, that would have been like Independence Day. There would have been people running for the hills. There would have been people like shooting guns at it. It would have been chaos. But it turned up and people are like on the porch having a barbecue, sat out having a beer at night, just driving home and see it through the windscreen. So it was like all these little individual experiences that weren't threatening.
And it's so individually documented too. Like, so many videos of that from different angles and everything. And we have no idea what it was. Not really.
Nope.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yep. And it wasn't just the one, it was there was a couple, and they were obviously massive objects. Not massive, but big, right?
Yeah.
They weren't, but what the heck? What
exactly.
You know?
It's absurd, as Jacques Vallée calls it.
Right.
So that when you do things like you read, you know, the Bible, and there's the burning bush or wheels within wheels and stuff like that, that to me is more like congruent than what kind of machine by our physics, you know, can. So
I think people need to realize that they have to, and this is what like this podcast is all about. I don't answer questions for anybody.
No.
People get really pissed at me though. I get mad hate on YouTube. Where literally I'll get comments of bumbling idiot talks too much. I can't even watch. Right? Or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I'm feedback.
Yeah.
You basically just talked to me for 45 minutes and said nothing. And I know that's not true. What I'm making you do is think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, people need to take a step back, take a deep freaking breath, and realize there's so much in this world, even in your backyard, that you have no idea about. Get down on your hands and knees and look in your grass and see if you know anything about anything that's in your freaking grass. You don't, unless you happen to be a biologist or a grass expert or a lawn, you know what I mean? That's just a little microcosm, but I think people are so, we need, because we talked about civil discourse earlier, what the human race needs is some freaking humility and understand that we are not the center of this universe. This is not, we don't have the answers to any of this. We're just here. We are tourists in our own world. Right. And stop thinking that you have the answers. Did you freeze on me? because we're talking about good stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're recording again, but every time you start talking about great stuff, man, things can go haywire, right?
Definitely.
Unbelievable.
Definitely.
But I don't even know what was the last thing you heard me say.
I don't know. I've just been swearing at my router. But so we were just talking about. You said humility. You know, we've got to have humility.
Yeah, we've got to have humility because at the end of the day, we think that we know all this stuff, and but so much of it is I'm convinced we're not supposed to know. And or that it's just not our place. If we figure it out, then we figure it out. But otherwise, it's not going to be handed to us. And that's what I was trying to say, like with this podcast. It's called broadcasting seeds because I'm planting seeds in your mind. And I feel like, a lot of shows do that. That's kind of the ideas. And I get a lot of hate for it because I want people to think outside of their little, and I say this a lot, think outside of your little box.
Yeah.
Because it's not natural. The guest I had last night that I was talking to, he kind of opened my mind to the fact that boxes aren't natural. They don't exist in nature. There's no straight lines in nature.
No.
So at the end of the day, a box is what? It's nothing but 4 straight lines, right?
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be in there, bro.
Totally.
Get out and get your mind out of it. And so if there's a subject matter that you have to think outside the box, it's UFO, UAP, alien, the whole thing. We're literally talking about something that is alien by definition to us, period. And we could obviously, it's a whole nother show to go down that rabbit hole, but at the end of the day,
there's 2 things that really help me get my head around it, and that's one of them is that, like, no matter what you find out, about how crazy this gets, the end result is your everyday life. It doesn't, just because we find out what's in the sausage, like
it doesn't change anything.
The end result is your everyday life. So people saying like, oh, what if they hate us? What if it's like this? It's like, well, if they did, you'd know about it. It's something bad would have already happened. You finding out this isn't going to trigger it into happening. So the end result must be that it either doesn't care or it's pretty cool with us,
Yeah.
Like it's like the ants.
Or hey, you're not the center of the universe, bro.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I keep saying, bro, but you're not the center of the universe. I'm sorry. You're not that important. We're not that important, at least to whatever it is. Or we're ultimately important and they're just using us to do everything that they can.
Absolutely.
But both things can be true at the same time.
Yes.
And guess what? It really doesn't matter.
No.
It really doesn't.
No.
But what matters is your experience.
Yes.
Truly.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm understanding from this whole space that we're in, is what really matters is the experiences. And this is why we talk to each other and to other people, because we want that experience, right? We want to share it.
It's like you said about the ants in your garden. Like, there is definitely a correlation between us fiddling around with nuclear stuff and this stuff turning up. And it's like, you don't care about the ants in your garden, and they might catch a glimpse of you every now and then. But if those ants discover fire one day, we've got a problem.
We do, right? Exactly.
And I try and think of it as like, it's impossible to think scaling up. You can't imagine, something that's 2-dimensional. Can't imagine this room that we're in now, So what we can do is think down. So I think about my dog. Now I've got this little terrier, and she knows what I look like, what I smell like. She can tell what mood I'm in. She knows what time we go out. She knows the rules, where she can and can't go and all this kind of stuff. But she's got no idea what taxes are, what romance it, like
Thank
all of
God.
these, like, yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I don't want to know what taxes are either.
I know, I wish, but God, I hope there's no taxes in space. But there are certain levels to what make us who we are that are just totally beyond her. So she thinks she's got me all figured out. I'm this thing that never ages and pulls out toys every now and then by magic and all that
feeds
stuff.
me and all these
Literally, we've got exactly the same relationship with call it what you like.
probably 99% of the universe.
Exactly.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're thinking about it, what do they say? 10, 11? It seems like it changes every day how many dimensions they think there is.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we know that we can experience 4.
Yes.
And everyone's like, oh, everything's 3. No, there's actually 4 that we can experience. So we're only seeing, if there's 11 dimensions, we're seeing less than half.
Yep.
Also, and I've talked about this in other episodes, like what we visually can see is only a fraction of the entire range of what we know about visual frequencies. And we can only see like a 7th of that or something. I have to find out the exact thing, but for some reason I keep saying it's the 7th.
Keyhole. It's a keyhole. And it goes all the way to like microwaves at one end and matter at the other end, and we can see through a dot. Like,
it's literally like looking through a telescope at at our lawn. That's
absolutely literally. The Professor John Mack from Harvard, he said that like your senses are reductory. You can't see the Wi-Fi and the radio signals around you because it would distract you and it wouldn't be good for you. For this little monkey, you need to know what food looks like, what's going to kill you, what's going to do you good, how to find a mate. And your senses have evolved.
And most people can't feel them either. I mean,
exactly.
A very small fraction of people can actually feel it, like they'll get ill or whatever. But you can't even feel Wi-Fi, not technically. But it's real. I mean, think of all the data floating through the air, floating through you or around you that you can't see. It's literally everything.
Yeah. So if we only define life as solid, but like, what would you call a virus that's floating around? Is that like we would say, oh, there's the flu floating around and getting people. So like, why is it inconceivable that there might be a form of life or intelligence that isn't solid all the time and sometimes can be, and then sometimes isn't? We could be surrounded by stuff. And like, to take it back to talking to my mum, when she's got a client and she's doing a reading, it's not like somebody's great granddad knocks on the front door politely and then comes in and has a chat. They're there. They'll just give you that information. So intelligence has a way, whatever your faith or whatever. I mean, religion is just another way to try and explain the unexplainable, but there is evidence that some form of life or intelligence that we have no concept of, in terms of solidarity and matter, can exist all around us without us knowing.
Well, it kind of seems like maybe there is, because there's the veil, like what we call the veil, right?
Yeah.
And or people on the other side seem to be living like in conjunction with us in the same space, but we can't see them and they technically can't see us. So it's like, what do we even know? It makes your mind explode a little bit.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, I understand why people get confused, but at the end of the day, it's not for us to know right now.
I totally agree. Yeah. So Professor Nolan, Gary Nolan, head of Stanford University, he really helped my poor little brain when I was trying to learn this stuff. And he said, like, if you try and have a conclusion, it's like going to Las Vegas and putting all your money on one number, he's like, you're gonna lose, or you're gonna be right and win Nobel Prizes, and fantastic, but the odds of that are tiny. He's like, just collect data and don't go, oh, that's this, that's that. I mean, if you get into remote viewing and stuff like that, the biggest mistake you can make is saying that's a church. What you do is you say, I can see a sort of triangle, and you just gently collect the data. As soon as you jump to conclusions, you're heading into a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Gary Nolan.
Yeah, amazing guy.
Yeah, I gotta check it out. I need to do this, man, but we've got to kind of wrap it up. I'm running out of time, even with technical difficulties. I figured out, if you can see, I figured out what's going on there. Or you helped me figure it out. But what I did is I just turned down the brightness on the screen.
Good.
And now it's gone, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Duh. Looking good.
Yeah, it's going right. Yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? It's just another instance of what we were talking about. I'm sitting here like wiping the screen. I know.
All part of the process, man.
It's ridiculous. So, I feel like we need to do this again at some point within, maybe in a short time, maybe a few months, if that would sound awesome or sound good. So tell folks where they can find you again.
Okay. Well, I'm in two places. So my channel on YouTube is Tom Vernon UAP. And like I said, I do the deep dive documentaries on there, or look into particular cases and stuff like that. And then I'm also co-host on the UAP Files, and you can find them on Instagram and YouTube. And on that, we tend to do interviews with experiencers and people that are really at the cutting edge of it. So it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So again, thank you so much for coming on. Great conversation. I wish I could talk to you all day.
I really appreciate it, man. Yeah. Anytime.
Yeah, for sure. I will definitely reach out, and thanks again.
Great, man.
Yeah, I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared. Hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe on my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me your way, cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they feeling the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Drowning, I'm off the deep end. Apparitions of all my demons. All my thoughts are committing treason. All alone, who gon' hear me screaming? Manifestations of my fears. Regrets that stretched out for light years. Can almost touch the light, homie, it's right there. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, don't let me drown.